Evening, everyone. Welcome to Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission meeting Thursday, September 7th, 2023. I'll go through the roll call. Call the meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. I'll go through the roll. Dwight, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Dwight Ryanowitz,
Mark Blackmore,
Tom Porter,
Jeffrey Marcotte,
David Morse.
and I'll note that we have a quorum. Looks like we need an alternate. Thank you, Doug, for stepping in tonight, for being with us. Seat of the order. That takes care of item B. And item 1C is the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. One nation. Thank you. Brings us to the chair's report, and I don't have much to report. I would like to introduce Cameron James, who is assisting Delia as a in the planner's position. Cameron, how long have you been with DeFi?
About 2 weeks now.
Learn
on the slip.
Then item 3 is citizen comment. Does anyone have any comments not pertinent to anything that's on the agenda this evening? Hearing none, we'll move along. Brings us to the meeting minutes. I think all we got is
We'll accept the minutes of August 17th.
I'll second that.
motion by David Moore, second by Porter. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That's what passes. Thank you. Brings us to agenda item B. That application number 623-13-14M 79, Sweden ordinance entertaining Hilbert subdivision modification lot line adjustment. Craig, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Here to represent us.
Yes, I am. So good evening. For the record, Greg Glaude, licensed land surveyor with Killingly Engineering Associates, with a place of business at 114 Westcott Road in Danielson, Connecticut. So if you remember from our last meeting, we were proposing to adjust the boundary line. So the outline that you see in yellow in front of you on the screen is the existing subdivision lot that was created several years ago by a KWP map. That's existing area is 11.1 acres. The proposed line that we're creating is the pink highlighted line, which is along a stone wall a little bit east of the brook that's out there. And everything west of that, which is labeled as parcel A on the map, which is 7.6 acres, is going to be combined with the parcel, which is number 79 New Sweden Road, to the south. And that will give them a new area that goes with the farmhouse of 29.7 acres. And then the front lot, the remainder will be 3.5, it's 3.497 acres. I think the one thing that was missing last month was we just didn't have the B100A approval from the Northeast District Department of Health. We did get that the very next day. So that has been submitted and is part of the record now tonight. I sent that over to Delia. So if there's any further questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but that's the simplicity of what we're trying to do with this one.
Very simple application, one of the simpler ones that you've seen. I did review that last month. I don't know if you brought that copy with you, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it.
Make a motion to approve 6/23/12/14/79, the lot line adjustment. I'll second that. We're only waiting for the health department now.
Yeah.
That's correct. Motion to approve. Presented by Doug Porter, seconded by Dwight Bryanowitz. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Looks like that passes. Thank you, Greg. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you for your time this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you. Commission's pleasure as well. Speak on everybody's behalf. The next item on our agenda is the review of home occupation permits. And I'm not aware of any. I did not receive any in the packet. I did not receive any correspondence from the CEO. I don't know if there's any discussion on that, but nothing to report on that. Brings us to the next item on the agenda, and Julia's going to give us an overview of how zoning works in town of Woodstock.
This one was the one I need to pull up that file. In some discussions that I was having with some members of the public and some members of the commission, I think there was some confusion about zoning in Woodstock, so I thought I would go over this before we get back for a discussion on short-term rentals. So just a little background on zoning. Woodstock first adopted land use regulations and had them for 5 years prior to the adoption of zoning, which became effective on January 1st, 1992. And just to make sure everyone's on the same page, subdivision is not the same thing as zoning. Zoning regulates the use of the land and subdivision regulates the division of the land. Land use zone, a land use district, and a zoning district are essentially the same thing. A tax district is not the same thing as a zoning or a land use district, even if they happen to be for the same area of town. Zoning is not about taxes. Zoning is about health, welfare, and safety. And paying property taxes does not grant you additional or different property rights. Woodstock currently only has the community district, the lake district, and the industrial park district as land use districts zones in Woodstock. The zoning regulations also include mention of the village green district and the seasonal cottage resort district. However, there have been no zone changes to make those, to implement those or to create those as actual designated areas of town, so they only exist on paper. This is the zoning map. And so the bulk of the town with the white background is the community district. The little tiny purple area, that's the industrial park district over by the old Crabtree and Evelyn building. And the orange zones, which are near the lakes, as you all, I'm sure, familiar with, that's the lake district. So each district or zone has their own permitted uses, special permitted uses, and standards. And it's normal for zones to be different with their uses and their standards. That's typically why we have different zones. That's the Euclidean form of zoning, and it's the most common kind. So the Lake District is in the town of Woodstock, but it's not in the community district. They're two different districts. Both subdivision and zoning regulations can be changed through the amendment process. Land use zones can be changed through the zone change process. This is a little flow chart. I understand it's a little bit difficult to read from where you're sitting, but just know that the process has all these different steps. And this one happens to be showing you the process for the commission. When the commission is doing an amendment, they don't have a deadline. What they do have to follow is once they set the date for the public hearing, we have to do notices according to the schedule and the state statutes. But they don't have a deadline for closing the public hearing. But once they do close the hearing, I have to do a legal notice about the outcome, and then I have to follow up with notifying the town clerk. So there's still many similarities. This flow chart, which looks surprisingly similar, this is if someone else proposes a text amendment, which could be a member of the public, it could be a group, a business. Someone could apply to change the regulations, and they would have to pay an application fee. And they would bring that proposed amendment to the commission. Then the commission would do the same thing where they schedule the public hearing. And they would have the public, give the opportunity to the public to come in and talk about the proposed language. At the close of the hearing, just like with the close of any public hearing, no more public input would be received or allowed. The commission would discuss the proposal, and then when they come to a conclusion, they would have to vote on it. So the difference in the process, as I said, the Planning and Zoning Commission, when they initiate the amendment, they don't have that deadline for the public hearing. If an applicant, such as a person, a group of people, a business, someone else wants to propose to change the regulations, there's the whole timeline, because you have to, there has to be an end date. The commission has to follow that process so that the public knows what's going to happen. It could go on forever. So prior to any change in the zoning regulations regarding short-term rentals or anything else that they might propose in the future, they would have to hold a public hearing on a draft that they come to an agreement on. That draft would be posted with the town clerk. I would do legal notices in the newspaper. There's a whole bunch of other notices that I would have to do. And then once the public hearing opens, the commission would be inviting the public to comment on the proposed amendment. As of today, there's been no date scheduled on the short-term rental. We're still in the drafting stage. And if you'd like, you can sign up for the public notice registry, which I'll talk about here. And there's copies of it right there in that little table. But I just want to cover a few more things. So like I said, a private person, group of people, or a business can propose an amendment to the regulations. It's the commission that reviews the proposed amendment, holds the public hearing, invites the input of the public, and then closes the hearing, and it's the commission that votes. Some folks over the years have mentioned what happens in Massachusetts and some other states. We don't go to a town meeting about zoning regulations. It's the commission that will vote on them. And if the Lake Association prefer, they could seek private legal counsel to pursue if they want to do other options, like deed restrictions or something like that, but the town would not be enforcing them. So back to the public notice registry, there's a copy on that little table. You can fill it out and then mail it to me, email it to me, drop it up in the land use office, and they'll get it to me. I'll add you to the list. You can choose to receive the agendas by mail, by paper mail, or by email, and then you'll know in the public hearings. The notice registry is not for all agendas. It's only for the public hearing agendas to change the regulations with the amendment for a zone change or the plan of conservation and development. And here's my address, contact information anyway. Does anyone have any questions?
Does someone who proposes a change?
I'm sorry,
to
sir,
regulation-
could you please state your name?
Oh, Chuck Driscoll.
Thank you.
Do people who propose zoning regulations need to be a property owner in the zone that they're proposing to change it?
No, I don't think so.
So you can propose changes to other people's zones.
Yeah. So now we can get back to our discussion on short-term rental. One moment while I get to the file. So I see a lot of new faces here tonight, so I thought maybe I'd just start at the beginning. This is the draft. We start out with the definition. And the commission has been working on this for several months now, and after discussion with Jeffrey Markhart, who's our new chairman, we decided to add the posted short-term rental as permitted use in the Lake District and the unhosted as a special permitted use in the Lake District, the same way it's proposed for the community district. So if you can see right here, I can try to make that larger, but then you won't see my comments, so. Can you guys see that yet, or should I make it larger?
It's not really focused.
So in the zoning regulations, divided by districts, each district has a list of permitted uses and special permitted uses. And then later on, we go to the article where we actually have the standards and what applies to that district. So right now, the community district allows bed and breakfast because this is the way it exists today. So we're proposing to strike that out and to change it to short-term rental posted as a permitted use in the community district. And then in the community district, under special permitted uses, we would add short-term rental unhosted. So the hosted is when the property owner lives on the property, and the unhosted is when they do not. just to be sure everyone's on the same page, we can go back and go over those definitions. So as you can see here, I think you can see it. Short-term rental hosted is defined as a residential dwelling unit occupied by the owner of record as a primary place of residence that is offered on occasion as an accommodation with transient guests while the owner is on site. And the short-term rental unhosted is a residential dwelling unit not occupied by the owner of record at the time of the rental and is represented by a designated agent within 2 hours of the rental property. And then they define what a transient guest is, the person who occupies a room in a hotel or motel, as well as the bed and breakfast for short-term rental for a period less than 28 days. So the recent change, they drafted the Lake District. They have the same permitted uses and special permitted uses sections as I mentioned earlier. And they currently allow bed and breakfast in the zoning regulations, and so the proposal is to strike that out and to change it to short-term rental hosted as a permitted use and short-term rental unhosted as a special permitted use.
Have any questions on that?
So what was the logic behind
Excuse me.
changing the,
Excuse me.
sorry, Julie Gordon? What's the logic behind
You say your name, please?
Julie Gordon?
I'm sorry, Judy.
That's fine. What was
If I have a hearing meeting, it doesn't work.
No, no, it's okay. No, I just heard her read. What was the logic behind changing it? Was there an issue or something that precipitated this?
I received some input from the public because they wanted to know why the Lake District was different from the community district. So right at the stage that we're at, we're just drafting it. There's been no conclusions or no agreements by the commission as to how they want the final draft to move forward to that later stage where we have a public hearing. So at this point, I think we're at the discussion stage.
Okay, and so explain to me the special permit, so if someone wants to rent their place for a week or 2 weeks, less than 28 days, they would have to go to the town for some special permitting process if this was to go forward without.
Special permit
I
process,
know the proposed it doesn't seem to be the situation.
the special permit process in Woodstock is a bit involved, but you wouldn't do it on an individual event basis. You would do it if that's what you wanted to do with your property. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with other businesses in town that have had special permits, but there's a lot of requirements. You have to do a site plan, provide a lot of information, and then there'd be a public hearing. So that's what they're talking about, requiring all of that type of information if someone wants to do an unposted special permit.
That's all based on a couple people making inquiries, correct?
For now, it's for discussion purposes.
Correct, but the whole reason why the discussion, the change is being filed is to the couple people out.
Well, they wanted to know why they were different, and so for the purposes of discussion, sure.
I believe it's also because before we've had bed and breakfasts in town, but the unhosted facilities are fairly new thing. Yeah, the Airbnb, I guess, is you're unhosted, but that's fairly new up and coming thing here, so it wasn't in regulations before, so it's just time to better get it into the regulations, why we're discussing it.
Yeah, so trying to draw a parallel, the bed and breakfast that were allowed before, which were allowed as a home occupation, they required that the owner lived on site.
Right.
So that makes it like a host.
Make that a host.
Jeff Driscoll again. So is this basic proposal to change the regulations to include the lake districts in this set of requirements?
Currently, yes, that is all we have.
How come it doesn't mention lake districts in here then?
It does, right up there.
Pardon me?
They was added last week. So
Section F, lake
section F,
district,
lake
subsection C.
district permitted uses. Item J, short-term rental hosting, special permitted uses, section F, short-term rental under.
So this is different than what was on the website?
I don't handle what goes on the website, so this was provided to the town hall. I believe last week.
How are we supposed to have discussion if we don't know what's being proposed because it's not on the website?
Well, I did provide it to the town hall last week. It was my understanding they would be putting them on the website. I don't have access to the website because I'm not a town employee. I do provide it to them. It was my expectation that they put them on the website with all the other materials for the meeting. So I don't know what happened because I don't handle the website.
I can tell you that. I have a copy here of what's on the website and there's no section out.
I was surprised to see this turnout, which is fine, that's great. It's good to have discussions, but we're just working, on it. So we're not posting this on the website for public hearing parties. This is just to show people what we're working. If we get to the point where we're gonna go forward with this, there will be a formal hearing. And at that point, it will be posted and officially posted exactly what we're talking about. That's when we have to be very careful what is put out onto the website and what is put into the public notice. But we're preliminary, this is preliminary discussion. That's why, and I got this package on Tuesday with all these comments. So it's a little bit, I work for a living, which I think everyone else does, making off. This asks for us to review a lot after we get home from night from working. And that's somewhat why I was surprised to see as many people here. When I drove in, and oh, it must be another meeting. I don't want to cut anyone off, but it's early, don't worry, it's early in the process. So if you have comments, that's great.
Yeah.
But let's not get into the detail that it isn't posted correctly on the website. We're not required to do that. All we required is to post our minutes, and we're trying to provide the information to the clients, to the people. Once we go to a public hearing, at that point, it officially has to be exactly what we're presenting going forward. Is
And
that correct?
it is our effort. I try to make an effort to send it to the town hall and we're working with their part-time staff to get everything put on the website, but I don't handle the website and I don't know what happened, but it was provided, I believe, in time for them to put it on the website. I just don't know what happened.
Martin Weason, possibly, that clarified a lot of stuff for me. I think there was a lot of confusion about assuming that the commission was just going to vote out short-term rentals across the board and any of the lake districts. So
No, there's a lot of rumors going
I
on.
didn't, again, reading the old.
No, we think it's great that all of you turned out to the meeting, so that way you hear what's
I'm
going
gonna
on.
reserve my comment for the formal hearing. Just a couple of things that, again, I'm being very brief. I'm wearing 3 hats tonight. I'm wearing I live in a property in Woodstock and Class A, built the house back 27 years ago. I've served in every position on the board except the president. And I'm now the newly appointed constable. I used to be a cop back in law school. So I guess that qualifies. You know, I don't wanna, again, I know everybody here has something, I have a big lot, we have a big house, we're far away from the lake, but we do have a pretty big beachfront. I don't begrudge anyone who's angry if there is a rental that's having a party, some college kids graduated from UConn, they're throwing beer cans in the water and just laying out bottle rockets. Yeah. As an owner and a fellow citizen with all my Lake Association and Lake District friends here, Quasit and Mungie, and is anybody here from Witches Woods? I call them the Jerry Garcia of Lake Districts, because they have that. So, and I don't wanna have to hear that. And as a constable, I don't wanna get the 3 o'clock in the morning call, saying, hey, Marty, can you get over here and do that? So there's remedies for that, the police. But I'm also a former constitutional law professor. But what struck me, PZC is leaning toward limiting short-term rentals in the Lake District. That's an issue under the 5th Amendment takings clause, most notably used for eminent domain cases. But courts have interpreted that to also mean regulatory taking, going in and taking the right of the property owner and tossing it, or making that property undeveloped, restricting it. And it's been some interesting legal cases out there. The Fifth Amendment, everybody knows, it's, I was right, very silent, no, I didn't steal that jewelry. But it also has a takings clause that we have to be really be careful about. If we restrict the property owner's rights to rent the property or make it so draconian, then I read some of those requirements. I know this is not the official hearing, but every one of us has septic system that's inspected. We have plot plans when we built our homes, we bought our homes. We have certain West Quasit Road has a different subdivision, can't have horses. I know Bungie allows seaplanes, I used to own a seaplane, West Quasit, or we don't, so I kept it over at Woodstock Airport, with amphibious, but I couldn't land on my own lake. That's okay, because those are the rules of the bylaws. Our bylaws also allow short term. Right in. I read the Bungie bylaws the other night. And fell asleep but the minutia. And here's this, and then we're gonna do this. It seems burdensome and I was just wondering if maybe if the lake districts can amend their bylaws. If we can amend the bylaw across the lake to allow seaplanes, yay, I'll get another one. But I can't go to the town and ask for zoning, I can't go to the commission and ask for you guys to say, okay, seaplanes aren't allowed. So there's a little difference between our bylaws and the commission's decision that's gonna be blanket on all three lakes. They have to be careful about the bylaws, because our bylaws are different. That's all I have to say for that.
Thank you.
You asked me.
I'd like to make a comment that in our draft that we have, that is on the website, evidently the new draft isn't on the website. I apologize if it isn't, but the draft we're working on. I'm 4 years on the commission. I've recently been elected to be the chair. Short straw, evidently. I'm glad to do it. With a good group of people. All do have jobs. I made a lot of time to bettering the town. And maybe everyone doesn't agree with the fact of our decision that we are better in town. That's why we're here to listen to some input. I was always kind of understanding that community district, that the Lake District kind of fell under the umbrella of the community district. I don't know why we didn't have the Lake District in the original draft. So after it being brought to my attention that it really doesn't fall under the umbrella, I asked you to add it to the draft, so we could have some discussion. I think you did a very good job of explaining how zoning works in the town. And fortunate to have you as a town planner. Again, this is just a preliminary discussion to get some input amongst ourselves from the public as well. So, yes.
Hi, Erin Asgard. Celia, you mentioned that posted unposted is a permitted use and then unposted is a special use permit similar to other special use permits. So are you saying that a rental home will go under the same permit as a bar or a restaurant or other special use permits? I know there was a couple of meetings, there was a special use permit to change the Sherwood restaurant thing. And so are you saying that a private homeowner with their residential home, their primary home, would have to go through the same process as a bar owner in order to rent their house out in the community ordinance?
It would not go through the same as a bar because you're not applying.
Right.
There will be a special permit process that a host of things need to be met. Certain criteria needs to be met to have a unhosted special permit.
Right. Is that criteria? I didn't see any criteria listed in the old version other than,
Yeah,
yeah, the blood, I just saw that it has to be their blood, children. I guess we're going with DNA as well, to check people, but that was the only thing that I saw, I didn't see any other criteria.
Before we get too far down that rabbit hole, we can jump back a little bit.
Yeah.
Special permit process that we have now is the same special permit process for any special permitted use. And maybe in the future, commission come up with a different kind of permit, but right now, a special permit process is the same special permit process for all special permitted use. So, in the different set of the or section of the regulations that specifies what's required for the special permit, that's not proposed to have an amendment at this time. That's why there's no drafted language for it. And if you'd like, you can find it on the website, or you can call me during the work day, and I can go over it with you. But that section is not proposed for any amendments. And to go back to what we were saying earlier about your deed restrictions or your lake association, planning and zoning doesn't get involved in any deed restrictions, whether they're subdivision, homeowners association, or lake association. And if you'd like to pursue what those options are, I would suggest you consult the lake association or legal counsel. Planning and zoning is not gonna get involved. If you, no, but you did something about, you have to be careful. You have to admit, zoning has to be careful. Lake association.
Zoning has to be careful that property rights is not divested from the property owner through a rule or regulation that severely limits their ability to rent the house out. We got some old couples on Fawcett who rent the house out 2 or 3 weeks a year. And as a constable, I tell folks, call me, I'll come check on that. They're not there for that period of time, so I know. And we, again, allow short-term rentals pursuant to our bylaws. So those bylaws have to be respected as well by any decision of the commission. That's my only.
I hear what you're saying, but I believe the zoning regulates the whole town. And if the zoning has an amendment that changes, then the lake association would have to make adjustments for that.
Well, the zoning also has to have a rational basis for it. You said it earlier, health, safety, well-being.
I
There's
understand.
no rational basis to just limit short-term rental as to health, safety, and well-being. And it cannot pass, cannot stand the test of the legal scrutiny. It can't. And I guess the setback lines, with the lake has special zoning for lake. Setback lines are bigger. Septic systems have to be effective. You can't put it too close to the water's edge. Drainage, erosion, all those things are safety and health concerns that make the lake better. Limiting short-term rentals, restricting it by having a couple of old folks go to the town hall and have a public hearing and hire a guy to come out and check the septic system, I think is, again, we haven't reached that point yet, but that's very good. It's burdensome.
Thank you. Yes, see your name, please.
Linda McGee.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I realize I'm on the website and this may not be part of that, but one question I have is, let's say that the number of people occupying a single dwelling for short term is limited to 4 adults and minor kids. Being one age or older. Children, the total size of the home, how many bedrooms or is allowing, and children 1 year or older, I'm not quite sure where they are. And again, I know I'm looking at the old one, so I'm not sure if it's accurate what we have. The number 2 under
I think it's what's showing up here.
Yep.
Yes. So you may not have access to this, but it should be on the website of the memo I wrote to the commission on August 30th. Anyone? All right, just a moment, I can show this.
just to reiterate. The information. Finally had and it's good. Input from you and everyone that is here. You have a public hearing, this is all discussed again. Nothing is written in stone until we actually vote on it after public hearing is closed.
While Delia's working on that, I just wanna, we've been really hard at work dealing with cannabis right now. We have to get done because our moratorium is coming up, we have to get them in place. We just finished that, that is coming to public hearing. So now we said, well, we have to go back and what other issues were we working on before we drop them to deal with cannabis. So we're just getting back to this. So I think most of the commission, this is the first time we've looked at it quite a few months. Please come to our campus.
Everything I can't write down my, can't write down my house, the cannabis room.
Yeah, well, my name is Arno Winkelmann. I moved here from Europe 14 years ago. And I do have an Airbnb in Woodstock, in the community area, near the Medicine campus. And we've been doing this for 4 years, and I wasn't aware there's this regulation being planned. For example, we have quite often families from Europe coming in. And I don't understand the rationale for 4 adults for a big house, right? Quite often we have working groups who do cell tower work. They have 6 guys, right? They have to sleep somewhere, and they love it in our place. So far, I have like almost 200 visits in my home. And they range from right now, there's a couple. And then we have families who come from Brooklyn, quite often Jewish people for whatever reason. They love the nature, and all of a sudden they're 10 people because they bring their family, their extended family, or we have quite often weddings, which is great here, right? They're all these wonderful venues. So we have wedding, not parties, but preparation weekends, where all the people come together. All of a sudden, you have like 8 people sleeping in this home, big enough for this. Then you have 15 doing the hair, and then they leave for the night. So with your regulation of 4 adults, plus whatever supplement kids you have, you would ruin my business. And I don't understand the rationale for 4 people independent of a house or a room or situation of the whole property. I just don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Celia, could you explain how regulations present a new regulation, how that applies to existing uses?
When,
Like, it says he's had this for the last 4 years. Regulations, just correct me.
Oh, yeah.
Regulations always start going forward.
Let me add
They don't
something.
go back.
Just to let you know how this happened. We bought the house of our neighbor. He died of cancer, and in order to preserve his great property, we bought it. And we didn't know what to do with it, so we fixed it up and thought, okay, we rent it out. We had no idea how much can you ask for a place like this in Woodstock. Nobody comes here, right? So we tried the Airbnb, and with no clue what this would entail. Within 3 months, we were super host and busy as hell. We have bookings for the next couple of years. Right, so apparently this is a really desirable spot for people to come to, which I had no idea. And, literally, and so the whole summer, it's like 5 months, starting in April till October, are booked solid. People just love to be here. They pay more on top of it. We pay taxes right to the town. There's a tax in every kind of rent we have. So, and back to your point. So would this affect us in the future if we are grandfathered in or not?
generally speaking, when a new zoning regulation is passed, like Doug said, you move from that date forward, it applies to new, whether it's a new use or structure or whatever, it applies from that point moving forward. The subject of short-term rentals really hasn't been that clear because other than bed and breakfast, they haven't been allowed. Woodstock has the kind of zoning where if it's not permitted, then it's prohibited. So I think there's some questions there that we'll have to.
I think it makes sense.
Well, I wasn't here, sorry.
lawyer, I tell you, take the bit. You move forward with that, that's a great idea, because when you buy into a property, you buy it under the existing zoning, existing, bylaw. Those folks should be grandfathered. If there's gonna be any type of requirement for the special permit, and folks can show a record of using their property for an Airbnb or VRBO, then I don't think it's fair for them to be buying something and then being told they can't do it. If you buy after the regulation might be passed by this commission, you're buying it, your lawyer should inform you, you're buying it subject to the bylaws of the Lake Association, Lake District, and the zoning regulations. You can't rent out your house without this.
Well, these are a lot of good, excellent questions that will, I think the commission will need to ask for input from their legal counsel. But I've been a planner for 22 years. I did wetlands enforcement, I've been zoning enforcement, and I would be my delight if every person who bought a property actually researched the property and checked the regulations before they bought
I
it.
hate those after closing
It
calls.
really happened.
Well,
But-
it all depends on the lawyer, again.
So
And the realtor.
We're a team.
I wrote this to the commission on August 30th, and you'll see it talks about some of the issues that are in the draft. And for instance, I'm recommending, since we don't regulate the definition of family anymore, I'm recommending that you not limit your guests to have to be related. I don't know how that would even be enforced. And if there were a group of people who stayed somewhere, I don't know when the town would even find out whether they were related or not. But most likely it would have gone home by the time the town found out about it. So how would you enforce if they're not even in violation anymore because they're now gone? So as a former zoning officer, I'm not the Woodstock zoning officer now, but I was for 12 years. So I don't think that it's a good policy to make a zoning regulation. It's very difficult to enforce. And that's my recommendation. I have made the regulation, the commission will be voting on the final language.
Jeff Driscoll again, could you comment on his question about how the number 4 adults came up for regardless of property type?
I think
we follow.
in the beginning,
Somebody else's.
someone recommended that they found a town's regulations, another town they liked. And so I drafted it based on the other town commission rights. And so we started there and then we started making changes that we felt would fit more with Woodstock. And we haven't finished that process because we've said we're still in the discussion and drafting phase.
But it
I
hasn't
think
been
another-
changed yet. I mean, you've been discussing it, but it hasn't been changed.
Well,
Actually, the first time it's been brought up.
We
we
have a
haven't-
lot of other parts of this.
haven't discussed this whole issue with 4 or 5 months probably, so.
My name is Heather Driscoll, and I'd just like to say that as you're thinking about this, maybe think about the size of the house and the size of the bedrooms. As you're building a house, it's in direct correlation to the size of the septic system. So if I have a house that's 4 bedrooms and my septic is in compliance with zoning regulations saying I can have 8 people in my house, and all of a sudden I'm told I can have 4, why would my family be able to live in that house with 8 people and the septic houses it perfectly, but I'm all of a sudden like, the people that are staying there for 3 days, no, you're 4. So as you're making these regulations come into play, I'd like you to think about that.
Well, I think the other thing that's gonna play into that is the fire marshal. So there may be, something by the fire marshal, how many square feet you need for how many people can occupy the space
Well,
for safety.
I'm
reasons.
saying the same.
No, I understand
People
what
would
you're saying.
occupy the house, living in it,
Right,
as the same people that I would have staying in it. So what would be the difference?
but do you know if it's unoccupied, how many people are really staying?
It's, well, my house is not, I mean, I have cameras, so I can see them. So
There might be
there's,
private
there
space
are,
No, outside cameras.
outside cameras, and there's. Trust me, we've done our research on trust me. So there are situations where it's a little bit ridiculous that the number 4 is thrown out when you can have a family of 8 people living in a house.
Once again, this is only discussion.
Right, and that's what I asked. We take that
Thank you
into
for bringing it up,
consideration.
and it's, something that is noted, and we will, discuss it more.
Thank you.
Anybody else? The commissioners?
Another, just a point of clarification, of what you say. Does the proposal, the draft of the proposal, exempt anyone who is now doing short-term unhosted rentals from future regulation?
I don't think that language is in there right now.
I thought that's what was said a little bit ago, that the grandfathered in.
And I don't believe the text is in the actual document.
Pardon me?
I don't think the words say that. So we haven't finished it, but that would maybe something that we want to add. In terms of,
Your intention is to do that then?
Not necessarily.
I said that we would be discussing it. So someone had asked something about David including certain language in there. All the red text are all the changes that we've made since the original draft that we started talking about. So, as an
Some of that
example,
As
this
a,
is, so this should be the most up-to-date version of it. All the red text and stuff we've discussed and made changes to. So when you say, well, what, something hasn't been in there, we may not have gotten around to the number of people or the family issue, but we have talked about a lot of other topics. That's why there's so much red text in there.
Celia, it's very I just, in there, it actually says, as short-term rentals are conducted on a temporary and periodic basis, no non-conforming use rights will be recognized for short-term rentals existing at the time of the passage of these regulations. So I read that language to say that it would be grandfathering anybody.
So it has been a while since I,
It's section L number 1.
so that's something for the commission to discuss, and they may be seeking their counsel from their attorney.
With
when
your
they make
law
a final
enforcement
decision.
stuff, you know, if you get pulled over with an open container of alcohol in your car, you tell a trooper, I've done this for years. Are you gonna get away with it? That doesn't make it okay, you know, so grandfathering in is a tough issue for us. We're gonna look into it, but if we say yes to grandfather, all of a sudden, everybody in town has been doing this for years. You know, is there records? We've got to look into it, but the grandfather thing is a sticky,
But if people have made an investment based on the number of bedrooms in their house and their septic system, then, that is grandfathering in is a fairly clear and fair way to protect people who've already made the investment in a house or upgrading their house.
is it a
buying
personal
all-
house or is it business?
We're talking about unhosted short-term rentals. What's your
Sorry, are you collecting money for this?
That's what we're talking about.
So it's a business. So it's business.
No.
No, it's not
It can be your,
business.
Just,
Airbnb.
that's what I'm saying, we've got, you know, so
Airbnb
many
is eight.
sites.
Airbnb's not setting up at Jeff's house. They sign up, hey, we're Airbnb. They just arrange people, hey, they're.
they're an advertisement
Yeah.
agents for.
Same thing, so it suggests that a business is being operated because somebody's renting the house out and not there. That just, I don't think that's a very logical argument. And getting back to what we talked about, grandfather, can be done very easily. Person who's doing the business and prepare an application, present it to the commission, to say, I've been doing this business for so many years, have it signed under oath, which under the pains and penalties of perjury, provide whatever records that they've had to improve the property or have the property rented. And Airbnb keeps records, so you can easily just download those, here you go. If that person files that simple ad notice that, hey, I'm gonna be taking advantage of it. And of course, it would not be transferable to a new owner, because the new owner would take it subject to the new regulation. To make this regulation retroactive, that's where I talked about potential of lawsuits against this town because of unconstitutional taking of the person's property right. And that's it. So there's lots of easy ways to do this. I'd be happy to help and talk to your legal counsel.
Erin, yes, IRS doesn't count this as a business. So I've had rentals, I've had short-term rentals, I've had long-term rentals, I've had all kinds of rentals. supplemental income. It's not considered a business, like, I don't have a, you know, Aaron Asgard House Inc. registered anywhere. And when I file my taxes, I declare it as supplemental, income, and it's not a business. The IRS does not consider this a business.
Okay. Yes,
Hi, Laura Curley.
thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. Actually, I'm at 29 Hiawatha and 58 Public Rock, so I'm committed to the town and good stuff. But anyway, I have a question because with funding, did not have bylaws that include short-term rental. And it's a private lake. So where does that private come into the lake?
Well, the zoning regulations for the town. Probably the whole town.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
And your bylaws in your tax district.
Cover the private?
Govern you more than possibly what the town governs you,
Mhm.
but, did that answer your question? I was gonna try to rephrase it. Does that answer your question?
Sort of, yes. Because the tax districts were separated at one time from the community district, what was the thought of that?
Way before me.
Wait for you.
Lake Bonney Tax District was formed in the late 1950s.
Yep.
And it was built by Camper Enterprises. And originally started out as an association, and as it grew, they modified it. And they formed the tax district under state statute 7-324.
Right.
Under that gives them a governing body over all the roads and commons of the tax district, and to create their own bylaws, deed and covenant restrictions, and rules and regulations. So that is a private tax. That's their own mini municipality inside a bigger town of Woodstock municipality.
Right.
So that's how that kind of works. However, because it resides in Woodstock, it falls under the zone of the town.
Okay.
But they have the right under the state statute to do certain things. And they also have the right under their bylaws to do certain things too.
Okay.
I don't know if that explains it. But
It does, because we owned our property on Lake Bonney since 1959, so we've been here a long time.
Okay.
And so I just need to understand that private lake that we invested in remains a private lake, and that the bylaws mean something.
it'd be very hard to dissolve tax. It'd be very hard.
And the deed covenants and the bylaws do in some regard tell us how or what is permitted
Correct,
for use of our property.
correct.
Okay.
And the deed and covenants can only be opened and modified every so many years.
Every 10 years.
Yeah, and then the bylaws, they're usually, it depends on the body, but they can be reviewed every year if you want.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. And it's hard to form committees.
Part of that board is volunteers. Thank God
All
for
of us.
volunteers.
Yes,
And, some people's position stipend, but the people say they're volunteers. So, there's a lot to what they do to keep the lake safe and, keep it a community,
correct. I agree.
a private community. Thanks,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Hi, Joan Rivers, Ardwell.
Thank you.
Excuse,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, I'm a real estate agent also, And under real estate law, if I rent someplace, if I, as an agent, rent to someone, I was told in my classes that you are allowed 75 square feet per person. So, is there another way to tell the renter that they can, and I'm just talking about renting, whether it be short term or, or long, or 3 months, or a year, or 2 years. They are entitled to have 75 square feet per person. So when I don't wanna step on, I hear her, she has 4 bedrooms. Why, why shouldn't she be able to rent? Just be careful when you're making these rules and regulations, that's what real estate law holds. So to tell somebody with 4 bedrooms that they can only have 4 people, might be a little tricky as far as real estate law goes. Also, I don't personally have to deal with that. I don't want more than 4 people in my Airbnb. When I have my family over, we have 6 kids between us and how many grandchildren? So, that I'm, entitled to do, it's my home. Also, we are not a homeowners association. I don't see how the Lake Association in any way, shape, or form can tell me whether I can have my 6 or our 6 kids there, or I thought 5, 6 grandchildren on top of that, or whether I can have a party with 75 people. I don't see how anybody can tell me what to do in my home. Not that that would be for a prolonged period of time. I understand septic, I understand, but I don't want any more than 4 people in my Airbnb. But I don't see how for a home of 4 bedrooms, that in real estate law, there would not be some, association to her doing that and having people. So, we are a lake association, but we're not a homeowners association.
Or
So-
different. It's kind of different. I don't know.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there's more.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, hi, Jose Macho. So
Well,
the,
thank you for coming.
just getting back to the issue with the number of adults. My understanding is there are a number of towns in Connecticut that have implemented these policies. Okay, so much of this is boilerplate that was taken. So whether or not it regards to a law or real estate, the fact is it may have been challenged by other
Macho?
communities. Sorry, so I'm just saying that some of this is, from my understanding, was adopted from other communities that have current regulations in place for short-term rentals.
Correct.
Is that fair to say? Okay, good, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
And none of it's set in stone. Again, that's why we're here for discussion. Taking minutes, and Delia's taking diligent notes. Writing a couple things down. Do you have something pertinent that you haven't already spoken about?
Just a couple of questions for the board to consider when you revise things. Paragraph 3 in section L, short-term rental. It appears that this is going to prevent someone, a resident of Woodstock, even from buying a resident, and then renting it out on Airbnb, because it says it must be the primary residence of the owner. So you would be limiting investments in home that with the intention of short-term rental.
Yes, that was one of our concerns, was that what's happening in other parts of the country is that corporations are buying homes and just renting them as short-term rentals and not living. So that's another issue that we have to deal with too. That was kind of the basis of that, is that we don't want an absentee owner coming in. That was our concern with that. An absentee owner coming in, just buying a house and as a corporation, using it as a money making thing, and that's, then you have just people rolling in all the time, all year round. Now it's just, we're not sure that's a desirable thing that we want.
I can understand that.
So that's why that was the basis for that thought.
I
So, and
understand that,
as
but
we
I
work
don't
through
see
this,
why limiting residents from buying a residential property and using it as short-term unhosted rental has any relation to what corporations in other parts of the country are doing, and that you're concerned about happening here. You're really putting a hammer down on any property that is not your primary residence, that you cannot buy that, invest in it, improve it, whatever you need to do, and then use it for short-term rentals, even if the short-term rentals follow all the regulations that end up in here with the special permits and the et cetera. You're preventing someone from buying a house and using it as a short-term rental and complying with all the other regulations.
right, I mean, it's another consideration. We're trying, there's a lot of stuff we have to look at.
So, the other suggestion I'd like to maybe consider is that, the permit in number 4 of the same section. Basically, when it says that the permit may be revoked by the zoning enforcement officer who receives information in the form of complaints, documentation, et cetera. So if your neighbor complains about you, whether it's judged to have merit or not, may not be your friend. Complaints about your short-term rental, the zoning officer has the rights to revoke the rights to do that. And I'm not sure that that's really how much control it's fair to give one person or even the board just from complaints. What about if there's a police are called and there's an actual offense or a ticket or whatever the police do? Something other than just a complaint by your neighbor or by somebody, not even your neighbor. I think that really has to be tightened up, or you could have, vendettas being enacted from somebody who doesn't like it.
So I know it's really hard to see, but if I zoom in on the text and you can't see the comment, if you zoom in on the comment, you can't see the text, so. I can't stretch the side of the screen, but, hopefully I can get the document put onto the website, and then if you are interested, you can read it and then come to our next meeting, because I'm sure the meetings will go on for a while.
Has that been changed? The language I was talking about?
If you let me finish, there's lots of my comments on the side of the document that the commission hasn't gone through. One of them is about the proposed enforcement procedure. I think it doesn't make any sense. I think they should use the same enforcement procedure that the ZEOs use for other violations. So I don't think you should have a separate enforcement procedure specific to this use, because since I've left the town of Woodstock as a town employee 5 years ago, there's been a handful of zoning officers. I don't know if that's gonna change in the future, or if they're gonna stick with the one they have now. But if that keeps happening, it just makes it easy to overlook like a individual zoning procedure for one use when there's a different procedure for all the other ones. I'm recommending the same enforcement process, and you don't just determine a zoning violation because you have a complaint. Zoning officer has to look into it, and they have to find some other corroborating information to show that there is a violation. I don't speak for the current zoning officer, but I was a zoning officer, and I wouldn't have determined there was a violation just because I had one complaint.
So this is already in consideration being tightened up and changed.
This is
I'm
all
hoping that's one of the things that the commission look at changing. I don't think that there should be a specific different zoning process or enforcement process just for short-term rentals. I think that doesn't make any sense. But that's something for the commission to discuss, and like I said, it's hard for me to zoom, and I could show you the comment and then go back and forth, and sometimes moving that gives people motion sickness, and I don't like seeing the screen move like that. But I can read you the comment. My comment is, not about enforcement, but going back to what you said about the short-term rental occurs on a lot containing only a single-family dwelling. My comment about that, since that's where we are on the screen, and that's what I wanted to talk the first time I raised my hand, when you had said something. My comment is, this appears to conflict with the allowance for the unhosted short-term rentals. Before finalizing, this should be made consistent regarding whether hosted or unhosted short-term rentals are allowed, and under which level of use, permitted use versus special permitted use, and make this compatible with that. So I think that text that's in purple, and maybe you can't read it right now, that says if a short-term rental occurs on a lot containing only a single family dwelling, I think that is in conflict with the part about the unhosted thing. And I also asked if someone has say, a two-family, or they have a single family with an accessory apartment. I'm not sure why it matters. If you can live in your home and use part of it as a short-term rental, why can't you live in the structure and use your accessory apartment as a short-term rental? I don't see what the difference is, but I think that's something for the commission to discuss.
We might even have committee meetings, discuss all this. Might go behind closed doors.
I just want everyone to understand, nothing ever happens behind closed doors.
He was making
I worry that'll get out in the rumor mill. Meetings are open to the public. We may limit discussions when we're working as a group, because we want to talk about the issues and not have how many people are here. We don't need 40 people talking about it. We'll have the opportunity, once we come up with final regulations, to have that say. But everything is open to the public. We're not hiding anything.
Once you do come up with your final proposal, and you have the public hearing, is there anything that happens during the public hearing that can make you change your proposal?
Hopefully, we listen to the public, which I think we have demonstrated in the past that we will. Ultimately, I have to be very upfront with you. The commission makes the decision, not the public. It's different in Connecticut versus other states. The commission makes the decision for what the regulations are. You're always welcome to appeal them and challenge them that way. But I think the commission's done a pretty good job of listening to the public over the years. And I think that's what we'll continue to do. And if you make a good point, then the commission may take that under advisement, make more changes, and go back and go from there.
I will say, 4 years on the commission, we have approved a number of items. All different things we've approved, and with the exception of 1 or 2 in my 4 years, I think we've had an unanimous approval process. So we're all pretty much on the same page. We can take input from the public. Sure, town, just happy to be here, trying to help town to be a better town. Delia's point, some of this stuff is very hard for a CEO 5, 10, 15 years from now to be able to release it. So it's a process we are. I see hands somewhere else. Yes.
My name is Ronnie B. I just would like to make a comment. These rules and regulations are for health, safety, and well-being of the community. Will you take into consideration proximity to neighbors? In the Lake District, we are 8 feet off of each other, and I know for myself, I can see 10 neighbors, and I can hear 10 neighbors, and you know, I think that has to do with well-being, and that needs to be considered as well.
Thank you. And that's.
Juliet Hanson,
Thank you for coming.
thank you. We have a summer cottage on Lake Funky on Beaver Dam Road, but I just wanted to say that I've sat in your chairs in my own community in Massachusetts as chairman of the Board of Health, and I just want to say how impressed I am. Quite often a hot topic will come up, and before the hot topic comes up, the board will have all these really boring meetings, and then a hot topic will come up, and a lot of people show up, and you know, we're all here because we want to help you make decisions, and I just want to compliment you on your cordiality and how good you've been during this listening session as members of your community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I would like to say also that some folks that are here tonight have been to other meetings that we haven't gotten to the topic and haven't taken it up for one reason or another. It's been on the agenda. We didn't get to it, or we weren't ready for it. One reason or another. So say thank you, everybody. Appreciate your patience. Fortunately, some other stuff came up, food and cannabis, and some other topics, but here we are tonight. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioners?
I'll just say, Jeff, that, you know, I agree. I want to thank everybody for coming out. You know, again, tonight we heard things from both sides, and it's just, we've got a lot to start right from scratch on this. Why some of this wording, we looked at what other towns are doing. And so we started with their footprint, and so now we're just tweaking all of it. That's what some of this, you know, the 4 people that was already written in to be started with. So we didn't necessarily insert the 4 people, and now we know to look into that, possibly removing that 4. That's what some of this wording is from. We can't take full credit for writing all of it from scratch. Delia's done a great job on a lot of this, but we are working with what's surrounding area.
Yes.
My name is Cindy Backer. I had a thought. I don't know if any of you on the commission here own properties that you use for short-term rentals, but obviously tonight you've been made aware that there's quite a few people here that do own properties that they use for short-term rentals. And since this might be new to all of you, maybe you might want to ask if any of these short-term rental owners might be able to help you understand how their properties are governed when they use Airbnb and VRBO. Because there are regulations and guidelines that all of these homeowners have to comply with before they can even list their property for rent. So maybe it might help as you draft the language to understand what guidelines they're under as well. Just a thought I had.
Thank you. We in previous meetings we've had comments from the public telling us some of the things that are required.
Okay.
Commenting on super host. I don't know how you get to that point.
You have to be really good and have a really good property.
I thought of being a super chairman.
Yeah, just like it's
Working on that. Working on that.
That's all it's for me.
Get a copy. Rental agencies require for hosting so that we could see what you people are doing, that people are renting out, so that we have. It was kind of a basis of what we're doing. You know, I started.
Sure. I was thinking about signing up for sure.
Good luck with that.
I just think that if we have an idea of what people are used to doing short-term rentals are dealing with, then we can see where our regulations fit in with those. Or, you know, if we need to do this, that's being regulated, we need to regulate it.
Well, as in response to that, I'd like to say that not all short-term rental, the promotional companies are gonna be the same. I haven't stayed at a VRBO, but I've seen their ad where they say that they're basically all unhosted. So Airbnb doesn't do it for their part, they tend to be hosted. And there could be someone who wants to do a short-term rental is not involved in it. There's probably more companies I haven't heard of. So we wouldn't want to tailor the service.
Well, it's just we have an idea.
But yeah, I can get you a copy of whatever you get from the two companies. You might find it.
Posted and posted.
I did learn right here in this room why it's called.
Why is that?
You know, if I get home at 9 o'clock, I get ice.
You know what?
Are you gonna tell us why it's an Airbnb?
But yes, because the first one, they did air mattresses.
It's an Airbnb and breakfast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's how
I
it
learned that
started.
right here in this one. I never went and checked on Wikipedia. Took it as a
Yeah.
It made sense to me.
But if you want to know what an Airbnb is like, I welcome all of you to just come walk through. And you'll see how, you know, how pleasant it would be just to stay there.
Thank you. Yes, we're past citizens' comments. I don't have any correspondence. Bring it to the agenda item. E. Move to adjourn. Adjourn.
So we'll be taking this up again at a future meeting, right? I've made a lot of recommendations that we have to.
This is our next topic of the work.
Well, we have to,
We still have to
we
finish.
didn't
Yeah,
set a hearing date for campus, we still have to.
we did.
Did?
Yeah, the 21st. 21st is the next meeting.
I don't think you would agree with that. We had to do it so we can get it approved before the moratorium. Check the work. You can check that.
They didn't go in, then you'll have to reschedule. I will check.
The other Jeff, the old Jeff, not the new Jeff.
Adjourned by Mark Blackmon, seconded by David Moore. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That will pass this, and I can have it. 8:55. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good, great.
Thank you.
Or, Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your comment.
How are you? Thank you very much.
Everybody, wait.
Okay.